In 2004, a single anchor dropped from a cargo ship off the coast of Egypt, and internet access across an entire region went dark. No missile, no cyber attack, no war. Just an anchor and a cable. Now imagine what happens when there's an actual war. Right now, as American and Israeli forces are striking Iran, and Iran has shut down one of the most important waterways on the planet, most people are watching oil prices. Most people are talking about missiles and drones. Nobody is talking about what's sitting on the ocean floor. And that thing sitting on the ocean floor, it might be the most important thing in the world. This is Silicon Strategy, and today we're talking about the invisible infrastructure that runs the internet, and why a war in the Persian Gulf might be the biggest threat to it that has ever existed. Let's start with something most people don't know. When you send a message, watch a video, make a bank transfer, that data doesn't travel through the air. It doesn't bounce off satellites. It travels through cables. Cables that sit on the bottom of the ocean. Cables that are, in many places, no thicker than a garden hose. These undersea cables carry more than 95% of all international data, including an estimated $10 trillion in financial transactions every single day. $10 trillion every day through cables on the sea floor. And here's where it gets interesting. These cables don't just sit anywhere. They follow specific routes determined by geography. And geography, in this case, means choke points. Narrow passages where the ocean floor funnels every cable through the same tight corridor. Think of it like a highway system, all the traffic moving through a single tunnel. If that tunnel closes, everything stops. The most dangerous of these choke points are places like the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, and the Turkish Straits. These narrow corridors concentrate both ships and undersea cables, creating what experts call systemic vulnerability. And right now, two of those choke points are in an active war zone at the same time. Here's what's happening on the ground, or rather, under the water. For the first time in history, both the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea are effectively closed to commercial traffic simultaneously. 17 submarine cables pass through the Red Sea alone, carrying the majority of data traffic between Europe, Asia, and Africa. 17 cables through one narrow passage, all of them now sitting in the middle of a conflict zone. Additional cable systems pass through the Strait of Hormuz, connecting Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar to global networks. Both passages are now effectively off-limits to commercial vessels. Now, you might be thinking, okay, cables get damaged sometimes. They get repaired. What's the big deal? Here's the big deal. Repair vessels cannot safely operate in either the Red Sea or the Strait of Hormuz while active hostilities continue. This is the part that keeps infrastructure experts up at night. It's not just that the cables might get cut. It's that if they get cut, nobody can fix them. The repair ships can't go in. They'd be sailing into a war zone. And we already know what happens when cables get damaged in this region, even without a war. In September 2025, damage to cables in the Red Sea disrupted internet access across parts of Asia and the Middle East, causing latency increases for Microsoft Azure services routed through the region. That incident involved no military conflict whatsoever, no war, no cyber attack, just routine damage, and Microsoft's cloud services in an entire region started slowing down. Now, multiply that by a full-scale military conflict. Now let's talk about the tech industry specifically, because this isn't just about internet speeds for regular users. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google spent years building data centers across the Gulf, betting the region would become the world's next great hub for artificial intelligence. The undersea cables connecting those facilities to Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia pass through two narrow passages, the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. Both are now effectively off-limits to commercial vessels. Now think about what this means. The three biggest cloud companies in the world, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, have bet billions of dollars on the Gulf becoming the AI capital of the world. They built data centers, they laid cables, they signed deals. And now those cables run directly through an active war zone. There has already been a drone attack on Amazon Web Services facilities in the UAE and Bahrain, which disrupted services in West Asia. AWS, taken offline by a drone strike in 2026. This is not a hypothetical. This is happening right now. And it gets bigger than just tech companies. The prolonged disruption in the Strait of Hormuz could have significant implications for India's aspirations to establish a $270 billion data center ecosystem. $270 billion. India's entire plan to become a global hub for cloud services and AI, dependent on cables that pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Meta Platforms has chosen Mumbai and Visakhapatnam as landing sites for its multi-billion-dollar undersea cable project. Google is expected to connect West Asia, Europe, and Asia through its Blue Raymond subsea cable. All of these projects, Facebook's cables, Google's cables, all of them routed through the same geography, the same choke points.
So why didn't anyone prepare for this? This is the part of the story that is genuinely shocking. U.S. policy protected chips from Beijing, but not infrastructure from Tehran. Billions of dollars in U.S. technology infrastructure and trillions more in planned investment now depend on fiber optic cables running through war zones. Read that again. The United States spent years building policy around protecting semiconductor chips from China. The CHIPS Act, export controls, billions in domestic investment. And meanwhile, the actual cables that carry all the data were sitting exposed in the Persian Gulf, protected by nothing. The geopolitical conversation was about chips. Nobody was talking about cables. In December 2023, a Telegram channel linked to the Houthis published a map showing the networks of submarine communications cables in the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and the Persian Gulf. The image was accompanied by a message. There are maps of international cables connecting all regions of the world through the sea. Iran's allies were literally publishing maps of the cables, signaling what they could target, and the policy response was almost nothing. Now, what happens if a cable actually gets cut? Even partial damage to the undersea cables could eliminate internet access across vast areas, causing major economic disruptions for entire countries. Damaging these cables could cut off military or government communications. The cables are the only hardware with enough bandwidth to accommodate the terabytes of military sensor data that inform ongoing operations. Let that sink in. If the cables go down, it's not just that Netflix stops working, it's that military command and control breaks down. Financial systems freeze. Governments lose the ability to communicate securely. The internet wasn't built for war. It was built for convenience. And now that convenience runs through the most dangerous stretch of ocean in the world. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The world spent decades worrying about cyber attacks, hackers, ransomware, digital warfare. And all of that is real, but the most catastrophic threat to the internet isn't digital, it's physical. It's a cable on the floor of the ocean that can be cut by an anchor, a naval mine, or a combat diver. In the 21st century, geopolitics is no longer confined to land borders or visible naval fleets. It now courses invisibly along the seabed. These digital lifelines are concentrated along a handful of choke points, where physical geography, commercial incentives, and historical infrastructure converge. The result is a paradoxical vulnerability. The very efficiency that allows globalized economies to function also renders them fragile. The war in the Persian Gulf is not just a war over oil. It's not just a war over territory. It's a war that is happening right on top of the infrastructure that runs the modern world. And most people have no idea. Subscribe to Silicon Strategy because the most important stories in tech aren't always about the latest iPhone or the newest AI model. Sometimes they're about an anchor and a cable and what happens when the world finally notices. I'll see you next week.